I'm CK. Tonight is number 2 in a little mini-series looking at Erica Synths educational modules. I did their VCO the other day. The link will be in the description. And tonight we're going to look at their envelope generator. This is the MKIXES.edu series from Erica. And they're straightforward components, but have some interesting aspects. Hope you enjoy the video. Here's the box, but before I go into that, I do want to say again for this series, one of the main things, or more important things, is the manual that comes with it. In this case, on their website, they have a 54-page manual, which is really about teaching the basics of what an envelope generator does and some electronics basics in a very practical way. I think these documents, the one for the VCO was very good, and the one here for the envelope generator also looks very good. I haven't read it completely yet, but it's a very pragmatic and straightforward way to understand the various componentry in an electronic circuit, whether it be for a synthesizer or something else. The other thing they do is they encourage you to take all the parts that come in the kit and breadboard it out yourself. I'm not going to do that because I find breadboarding, at least for me, somewhat tedious. So I'm just going to be building the kit. But if you're interested in really understanding how these modules work and how electronics work in general, but more particularly how electronics and music work, you may not want to buy this module, but I would definitely say go to Erica Synths' website and look up these PDFs. You'll gain a really good understanding, if you don't have it already, of what basic electronics and basic music circuitry is all about. And that's pretty cool. But we're looking at the EG today. So let's open up the box. And the first thing we'll do, as is my habit, is look at the front panel and the circuit board. So here's the front panel, and let's see. Gate, that's going to be the input. That looks like a switch for either looping the envelope or a single shot. And then that's probably an LED right there. An attack pot, a decay release pot, a sustain pot, and out and inverted out, I believe. So that's good. In a simple module, this is relatively inexpensive. I think it was less than $100 USD. I got this from thunk.co.uk. But this looks like a very competent envelope generator. The only one that I would say, hold on a second. It's also pretty narrow. The only one I have currently that's narrower would be the Frequency Central System X envelope, which is about half the size. But it's also more expensive. But this looks very good for... But this looks very good. Let's look at the circuit board now. Yep, I didn't put my visor on. Let me put my visor on so I can actually see the circuit board. Okay, straightforward circuit board, envelope version 2.0, November 2021. Schematics by Moritz Klein, PCB by Angus Petrus of Erica Synths. As we look at the board, it's all through-hole plated. and all the values for all the components. I'm making sure all the components, because I've been bitten by that in the past, are there, and it looks like you've got a series of test points or connection points where you can pull off all kinds of signals if you want to. I did not see that in the build guide, but I didn't look really in depth. All the holes are through-hole plated, which is always good to ensure that you will not get a cold solder joint. So circuit board looks great. Power connector, and again, they do this is the red stripe on here is actually little red dots, and it's little stripe, little dot, little stripe, little dot. I'm going to be real nitpicky here, but if you're swapping modules in a reasonably dim light, like at a club or maybe even in your home studio if you don't have great lighting behind your rack unit, this is really hard to see. I like a nice solid line that clearly differentiates this wire from the others. But that's, again, that's very much a nitpick. One bag for all the components, all the electronic components, which is good. Not a bunch of Ziploc bags you gotta throw out or hopefully get recycled. See what we've got. Got some chips here. They're TL072, so they're a bunch of op amps. A little switch. Ooh. 2, 4, 6 diodes. That's a lot of diodes for a simple kit like this. Bunch of resistors, a big fat cap, big fat 47 microfarad cap. It's only 50 volts, but I mean for eurorack that's fine. A couple of film caps, another big cap. How big is this one? Oh, that's another 47. The one LED and 2 more diodes. So it doesn't look like many components at all. So it looks like a straightforward kit for someone who hasn't done a lot of modules. And we've got the mechanical bag. And let's see what we've got mechanically for this kit. A couple of pots. There should be 2 different values, I would say, if I were designing this. Yeah. 2 500K, or I mean 100K, 1 10,000K audio taper, 3 jacks, and a power connector, which is keyed so you can't get it wrong, which is great for a beginner or intro type kit. So that's it. Looks like it'll go together pretty quickly. So let me get the soldering iron heated up and we'll get this thing put together. Now we're ready to go, and we're going to start with putting all the flat components on the board first, all the resistors and the diodes. And I'm going to add a couple of things here that are aimed more at folks who haven't done a lot of eurorack or general electronics stuff before, just because may as well, and also because this is going to be a rather short video. When you're working with resistors, as you know, the color bands tell you what the values are. Now, they either come pre-marked, or you can memorize the color codes and you can figure out what value it is, or you can get a handy-dandy little calculator like this one that I put together a while ago. This has coloring for resistors on it, so we can see this is a brown, black, black, orange, brown. So these are all 100K resistors, and the last number and the last stripe indicates that the brown stripe indicates that they're 1% tolerance. So it's 100K plus or minus 1%, 1K. So you can also figure it out that way. Or the other thing, you can always just check them with your meter. Doesn't hurt at all to get your meter out, put the leads on and say, okay, it says it's 100K, but what is it really? Okay, so that's showing up as like 87K, which is not within the tolerance I expect, so I'm going to put my alligator clamp leads on here to make sure I'm getting good contact, because my thumb and forefinger may not be giving it great contact. Okay, so that's right on 100K. So you can memorize resistor codes, which I did in 1969 when I was 11, but it's all gone out of my mind, so I don't bother anymore. Or get a calculator that does it for you, get a wall cheat sheet, or simply use your meter. The main thing, the reason why I went into this a little in depth, is never hesitate to check. It doesn't mean anything. I know I've run into some people over the years that say, well, if I don't have it memorized, I'm failing. I need to have it all memorized, and I need to know them. I need to just know them without checking. No, check. That's why you got tools. That's why you got calculators. That's why you got a meter. Nobody's watching over your shoulder saying, you did it wrong, Bobby. You should know this instinctively. So use the tools that you have at hand. Don't clutter your brain with memorizing color bands if you've got other things that can do it much more quickly and easily. That's my little rant about that. So now we'll do one just for fun. Pretty straightforward. The main thing when you're working on a new board set from a manufacturer you might not necessarily have worked with before, you don't necessarily know which software they're using to understand how far you need to, how much slack, for a lack of a better term, you want to have, because some boards and software packages lay out a PCB so that you want to bend right at the resistor body. Some of them, like this one, and where did my good ruler go? I've lost my good ruler. Some give you hole spacing that means you have a couple of millimeters on both sides that you're going to go out and then bend down like that instead of right up against the body straight down. Some board manufacturers, Bafaco comes to mind, you need to bend the resistor leads right against the body of the resistor because they're cramming a lot of stuff in a small space. But just do one and say, oh, okay, that's the way they want this. So that's the 100K, it's going in one of the 100K slots. And you bend the little leads down, and you grab some solder, and you grab your handy dandy soldering iron, heat it up a little bit, and watch the solder melt right in. And because the holes, the component holes are through hole plated, the solder's not just on one side, it actually wicks in to the board. And you probably can't see this, I gotta get a better upper camera. You can see on this side of the board, it's actually, you can see where the solder's come through. So that means it's a good, strong solder connection, electrically very, very conductive, and you don't have to worry about that. Then you clip the leads off. That's all there is to say about resistors. And so I'm going to put the video in fast motion playback so you can watch all the resistors go on the board really quickly. Okay, I'm going to stop for a second here. I forgot about this. This board also does something that I don't particularly like, but they use stand-up resistors. So sometimes, for space reasons or because they added a part later in the design process or whatever, there are resistors that you don't lay flat on the board. There are resistors that you don't lay flat on the board, but you stand up, and let's find one here, like this one at R15 is 100K stand up, and that means you drop it in like that. I don't particularly care for them because I believe they are error prone. I believe they're, by standing them up, you have a potential for also knocking them over and potentially shorting or grounding the leads. I prefer them flat on the board for electrical safety, for lack of a better term, but they're not bad. All the resistors are on. Now we'll do the diodes, and we've got two types. We're going to do the big fat ones first, the 5819s. And the important thing about diodes, very important thing about diodes, is making sure you get the polarity right. Since a diode is designed to only allow current to flow in one direction, mostly. Obviously there are diodes that will start conducting if they get enough voltage the opposite way, and on this there's a nice silver band here, and on the circuit board there's a nice line there where the 5819 goes, and you just make sure they match up. And these are the 4148s, and instead of a stripe painted on there, they've got black glass at one end. So I'll be putting those on, and again I'll go into fast motion for that. Now we're going to put all the sockets on the board. 3 of them. And the silk screen on the board has a little notch in it that you match the notch in the socket to, so we can ensure that we're going to get the chip in the right way. Now there's a couple of ways. I'm going to back off just a hair. There's a couple of ways to approach putting sockets on. One way that I do it is particularly for small IC sockets like these 8-pinners, is I just rest it on my pinky behind the board, and then I do one leg, let the solder cool, pick it up, and take a look. As you can see, the IC is not flat on the board, and that's okay because it's securely on the board. So I will just press on the IC, heat that leg up again, you can feel it click, and now it's completely flat. So that's one way of doing it. Another way, and I often use this for sockets above 24 pin sizes, is you take the socket and again make sure the notches are pointing the right way. Then from your handy dandy toolbox you grab some locking tweezers, which I hope you have. I have a video on tweezers, I'll link it in the description, and you just clip the chip between the tweezers and the motherboard, and as you can see, it's not going anywhere. So you can solder, and you know it won't fall out, get kicked up sideways or whatever. The only thing you have to be aware of, and this, we talked about heat sinks a minute ago, if you have your tweezers touching, it's going to obviously wick off heat from the process, and that will not be good for you. So just be careful not to have your locking tweezers touching your soldering iron tip, or you'll lose heat. Now we're going to do all the little caps. These are all 104s, I think. Yeah, these are all 104s. Actually, I said they're all 104s, but I haven't actually verified that. So I will want to do that, because things happen. Components get mixed, somebody makes a mistake when they're putting together a kit. And these are all 104s. And those are they're 1/10 of a microfarad. And when you're working with boards that have integrated circuits, you'll often have quite a few of these. You probably know what a capacitor is, but I'll just state the obvious. With these little 1/10 of a microfarad caps, they're little batteries basically. They're buffering power to the chip, so if there's a low power situation or a high power situation, it smooths it out so the chip only sees the standard power it always gets. And another aspect of that is they're smoothing out some interference and noise, and that generally means part of that is noise and inductance picked up in the circuits, traces on the circuit board. So when you've got a bunch of these and you're looking at your board saying, I wonder where these go, the vast majority of them will go very close to the IC or IC socket. Now we've got 2 film caps to go on here. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the transistor on the board, and it goes right down here, and it's got a flat spot here to correspond to the flat spot on the transistor. And by the way, I'm just going to double check the part number. 548. The only thing that's a little unusual about this is they're pulling the middle leg, the gate leg, forward instead of back, which is a more traditional way to do it, but that's up to the board layout software people are using. Some do it one way, some do it another way. Everybody's got to differentiate themselves somehow. Now we'll do the big caps, and these are polarized. Long lead is positive, short lead is negative, stripe side is negative. So if you look at their circuit board, you'll see there's a stripe. That's where the stripe side will go, the negative lead will go. And finally, on this side of the board, we're going to take the power socket, and I'm going to look at it and see how it's oriented. It's going to be oriented, so you can look at the pictures, you can look on the diagram to see where the slashed edge is, but one of the more reliable ways with a kit like this is the 12 volt pins are marked on the board, and the 12 volt side has the red stripe on it. So you look at your connector, which has a little plastic key that goes in this slot, and you get that oriented, and you'll see the red stripe is going to the 12 volts, negative 12 volt side, so all's good. And again, same soldering technique as I use on chip sockets, pin headers, and other things. Get one leg in, push it down, heat it up. And that's all the electronic components. Now next thing, you can go back and clean up some excess flux and all that. I sometimes do that, sometimes don't. Now we're going to do all the control components. And we're going to start, the build guide recommends that we start with the jacks and solder them all on. I'm actually not going to do that. I'm not going to solder them yet. I'm going to get all the components on before I do that. Then we're going to do the pots. And remember, there were two 1 meg ohm pots and one 100K pot. So, and we have the one switch. And we'll get that in. A switch is like this. It doesn't matter which way they go. They'll figure it out. Now, what I am going to do is I'm going to solder one leg of jacks on opposite ends of the board. And now we're going to test fit the panel to make sure we get everything aligned. And there we go, it's all aligned right now, even though it's a little high. Now, what I did before, when I soldered that one, that jack was a little up. There we go. Now that's better. So is this one. There we go. Now I'm going to take some of the jack panel nuts, screw them down finger tight on the two sockets that I soldered one leg on. Because that stabilizes the board. Now we can make sure everything rotates smoothly. Now, and that gives us all the heights we want, and we can shove the LED through the front panel. So we've got our alignment all right. I'm going to back this camera up again. I'm sorry, I keep moving that back and forth tonight. Now, we'll just solder everything up. And again, I'll go into fast motion while I'm soldering that. Okay, as you may have noticed there's not a lot of room in here to solder the LED leads, so just be careful. You don't want to run your soldering iron up against the electrolytic cap. The other thing is, you'll see here, the switch has got a little free play in it between the front panel and the circuit board. So we're going to have to make sure it's all the way down. And again, just simply go back to the same thing we've been doing for sockets, power connectors, and other things. Support it with your pinky, or in this case my ring finger, and get one leg soldered. Come on. Get one leg soldered. Make sure it's straight and flat, and it is. And we can do the other legs. Now again, be careful with your iron when you're doing a control board or control components like this, which are on the same board as your electronic components, because you don't want to have your soldering iron resting against a diode or a resistor or capacitor while you're soldering a front panel component. Next step, put the ICs in, all these little op amps, and these are actual TI Texas Instrument parts. I'm going to bend the legs in a little bit on the side of my workbench. Now, they don't have a physical notch cut in them here. What they have instead is a little dot in the ceramic. That's the notch end. So, just line them up, seat them firmly and quickly. Okay, there's all the ICs in their socket. Pins are all in, none of them are bent. Now, put the power connector on. And it's ready to go in the test rack. Here's the front, side, the back, other side, top, and bottom. And one last quick view to see if we got everything soldered in. And we did. So we'll put it in the rack. Okay, let's see how it sounds. So we're using the VCO that goes with this set. This is the educational one from Erica Synths, going into the envelope, which is going into a frequency central, more VCAs to translate the envelope, and I'm pinging it with the Midi Thing and a little MIDI keyboard, the Midi Things from Bufaco. So let's hear how it sounds. The envelope looks like you would expect. Let's take the attack up some. I'm going to take the sustain up because that's giving me more voltage on the output. Let's try increasing decay a little bit. Take decay and release all the way up. And there it goes. Takes quite a while to trail off. As you can see, it never flattens up when it's flattens out when it's all the way up. Let's go back. Take the attack down again. And take the decay and release down. Let's see how percussive it can get. Now let's try it. Take the inverse of the signal. I'm going to take this all the way down. That's not turning off. That's interesting. So let's see how that works. It's not just inverting the wave. Now I did not expect that. I would have expected just a reversed wave, but that's okay. It's funny, you have to take the sustain up quite a bit to get a big voltage level coming out. Now I'm going to change this a little bit, and I'm going to use my Division 6 MIDI sequencer, and we'll drive the thing from that. will speed it up pretty quick. Until it flatlines, let's take the attack off. So that works fine. Now I'm going to switch on loop and see if it does anything. Yeah, loop is not doing anything. I'm not sure what it's actually supposed to do, but whatever it's supposed to do, it doesn't appear to be doing it. Even when I hold the key down, it's not triggering off. I'm going to get in the shot a little bit because I just want to check one thing. Let's see. I was double checking to make sure I had actually soldered all the contacts on the switch, and I had. Maybe that works with the inverse. I don't know. Nope. So I'm not sure what loop is supposed to do and why it isn't working right now. So that's the way the envelope generator works. It works as you would expect. The only question I have is why I have to have the sustain up so much to get why that increases some of the voltages, but I'm not going to fiddle with that. So it's a good unit, very quick build as you saw, a really great beginner kit, and again the information they provide in the user's manual for this is invaluable for practical electronics knowledge. If you're just getting started, I would recommend you get either this VCO, this envelope, or the next one I'm going to do, which is their VCA. Hope you enjoyed the video.